With that, I believe we are live, which is great because we got a lot of stuff to cover tonight, so we're in just a little bit early, which is great. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. This is a really fun episode of Pepakura Tuesday. It's a little bit of a break from our Doom armor, because I have fallen down a really fun Republic Commando rabbit hole lately. And it's also shown me a bit about different ways to use some of the modeling tools that Pepakura has in fun and exciting new ways. So I thought this could be a really fun episode of Pepakura Tuesday. So this all kind of came from some other stuff we've been talking about. I'm working on a very big tutorial series, one of the pieces of which I found a really fun Republic Commando model for, and I actually built a test piece. Part of this I got done on stream last Thursday, and the rest of it I was able to actually glue together on a little bit of time off over the weekend. But you can see this thing has really come together, and I'm a big fan of it. But I know that there's a lot of places we can continue to go with it, so I talk just through the little slit in the mouth. There's definitely places I still want to go with it, as well as this doesn't have the entirety of the shape that I want, which I was able to find in this fairly low poly version of the Republic Commando you can see on the screen here. And through some kajiggering, some absolute buffoonery, I was able to turn this, oops, not into that, into this, which here we'll kind of jump back and forth a little bit. You can see it's just a lot blockier, especially in the cheek and around this whole area here. It's very ill-defined, and we're able to get somewhere like here by using some very fun tools that Pepakura has available to us, and this model gets very, very clean and a lot more usable, especially for foam. So thought we could talk a little bit about that. We also, as some of you know, have a Discord now, and I've actually been asked to review one of our fans' unfold. So we're going to be looking a little bit back at Halo, actually, and we'll be kind of bouncing around and doing some fun stuff tonight. So tonight, let's start with the Subdivision Tool. So obviously you can see there's a lot of really fun stuff happening here. There's a lot of good details that have been sort of put together. A couple things I really want to highlight on this build include the inclusion of this line up over the top here. That's a detail line that's missing from the base model. You can kind of see it in the texture, but it does sort of just disappear and have nothing to actually grip onto there. In fact, there's just a blank space in the middle of that line there. Hey, Melina, glad to see that you're on board. Let's keep going with this. So, like I said, a couple of different things. I'm just gonna close this for now. Sorry. A couple different things. We've got this line up over the top here that I really love. I'm also a big fan of something really fun that I was able to do. Good evening, Melvin. That I was able to do with the faceplate, because in the original model, when you go to unfold it, due to the intense nature of some of these angles, especially the angles right along here, this faceplate from around here up around the visor like that can't be one piece because it intersects in the middle. But you can see on the edited version, we were able to get those to ease up just a little bit so that now it can lay flat as one piece. We don't have to do two different pieces there. I was also able to capture a little bit of detail that was sort of missing from the other helmet. You can see there's definitely the suggestion that there's a recess right here on the 3D model itself, but on the, shall we say, the upgraded version, there's actually not only this sense of rounded shape that works really, really well and ended in a really good place, it's also got the inner detail here that I was able to just essentially emboss on the face of it right there. And it's all part of one easy to use template like that. I was also able to do a lot of other small things, like obviously this is a lot smoother here. These angles, especially in here, that's all a lot smoother. And I want to kind of go into different ways to achieve that, as well as things to kind of avoid when using the Subdivision Tool. What do we mean by the Subdivision Tool? Well, let's dive right in. So this texture is a little bit hard to see through sometimes. It's a good reference, but it's a little hard to see through. So we're actually just going to turn it off. I might I'm not going to turn shading on because shading tends to go wonky once you start using the subdivision tool, so bear with me here. We have got the base model, and we'll go back and forth between some of the different ways to view this here. But we're going to just start by going to the 3D menu, go to Edit Mode, Subdivide Edges, and make them smooth. This is, in my opinion, one of the most specific and yet unclear options in any menu I've ever used. So bear with me here. We're actually going to be bouncing between two sets of tools here, primarily the subdivision tool, but also this little thing underneath that says Edit Model, which has a couple of different options, including the all-important Delete Edge, Divide Edge, and Swap Edge. We will do some splitting of quads, but that's not as big a deal for what we're about to do. So let's go to the subdivision tool, and let's start by looking at some edges we want to make smooth. I think one of the most readily apparent edges to clean up is actually this guy right along the cheek. Like, you can see eminently that this thing is weirdly rounded and strange. So it's going to be weirdly blocky and not as round as it should be. So if we just select these edges and crudely, I've done very little here so far, crudely just do the interface here, where does that get us? Not too shabby. Those are pretty clear, clean lines. It's a big improvement over what we just had, but we can go further because now you can see the interfaces don't quite look the way they should. You can see it's divided all those edges up into subdivisions along this line. And this line ends up looking really cool, but this line looks like a lot of weird fans. We can make this look more like it looked before, which was sort of a series of, shall we say, parallel polygons. So to that end, we can bind it in one direction here. We got that, and we got here. Now I'm about to do something, and it's going to be bad, but I need to show you what happens when you have two lines, shall we say, two overarching lines that just end in one point. It attempts to round them over. You can see this doesn't look right at all. In fact, it's taken this and it's pushed it way back in an attempt to try and smooth between those two lines, create a rounded point there. In fact, if I were to run it again, it would try to get even rounder, and we don't want that. Let's do this instead. Control Z, go back to the subdivision tool, and here's a fun thing. You can't smooth between a T. What do I mean by this? When I have a line like this, it's going to try to smooth that over. But if in the middle of that line, I put the post of a T, it'll recognize that that's meant to be a sharp corner. And because it's a sharp corner, it will remain essentially where it is. To wit, if I go like this and finish this around here, now this point stays pointy. But there's a problem. You can see in the back here, it's gone ahead and rounded itself over because, again, we unbounded, we did not bind this to its own thing. So we can put something right here to create a sharp point there, but now there's no sharp point there. You see how this kind of whack-a-moles around. We can, in the end, go around these points and essentially just say, okay, that doesn't need to go anything, so it just ends in a T there. And this won't smooth to anything because it's only one line. So instead, let's kind of go along here. Go to, let's say there. And there. So, what do we think? Have we missed anything? Are we missing anything? I don't think so. I think that this is how I actually did it the first time. Which is that ends in 3, 3. This one ends in 4, which is fine. 3 and up is all going to end in a corner. 2 is going to try to round over itself. That's more than 2. 1, 2. Yeah, there we go. I like it. And you can actually sort of see this is what I wound up doing on the final version. You can really see the subdivision in there. Now, I would say this almost looks even smoother. Like, this is fewer subdivisions. To that end, I'd kind of like to show a little bit more about this menu. If you go to the subdivision tool, you can go into details, and it will let you set a limit for how harsh of a divide, how small of a degree, essentially, it will allow you to divide by. So this goes from 125. I've really only gone up to like 10 or down to like 3. If you ramp it all the way down to 1, I'll show you what it does. It'll create an extremely smooth line, don't get me wrong. But the line you are left with will take forever to unfold, because that's truly just so many faces that it starts to become unusable. It's not good. It won't work for what you need. And so instead, I like to work somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 10. See, even at 3, this is still somehow more usable. And I think this might actually be as far as I went on the cheeks for the original one there, yeah. And I'll kind of just copy it over to the other side. Oh, I forget, is this symmetrical? I don't think it is. No, it's not. Never mind. Sorry. Passing fancy, not something important. Okay, so let's see here. This goes to there, goes to here. Bam, bam, bam. Let's finish this up like we did the other side. And there. So now we have two... we'll do this way because that's what it looks like on the other side. We have two identical sides. When I press go, they look really nice together. And overall, the shape is improved. I like it a lot. Especially in this groove here, because this has really flattened out, but there's still a really concrete line there, which is great because the Republic Commando has a detail line along that. In fact, this model that I built has it as well, but I use it more as an undercut to create that shape. And I don't know if that was the best decision, but it is the decision that I made. So, there's that. Let's take a look here. So, we'll undo this because I don't want to keep redoing this every time I hit the subdivision tool, because if I go, and then I go to do more subdivision, you'll find that those lines are still there. And while I can add more, even if it's just a bad idea, I just put more lines in, I can run it again, but it will subtly continue to change those lines. I don't really want to do that. So we're gonna undo. We're gonna try and do this sort of in stages. Do this all at once, if you will. Now we've talked a little bit about the rule of like 3s and T's, which is where if you have a T, it'll create a sharp corner. And you want to preserve corners, especially if you're trying to tell the machine, the computer, that I want to smooth over certain edges. There are obviously some things that need to still be straight and very, very sharp. To that end, let's take a look at the very brim of the model here. Because I did go through and do a lot of smoothing on this because it's pretty blocky. And I think that those, especially when we're talking about making patterns look better, the very edges of parts that you will be putting together, the cleaner you can make them, the cleaner the edges of your templates are going to be. So let's go ahead and, actually I'll sort of demonstrate. I want to go around this entire edge here, just like this, because I want that to be smoother. And I will just sort of run it up there. Now, there are corners, so I will go into sort of the mid-space here and grab all the corners so it has harsh places to show where it should stop. Now, when I press go, it smooths it down pretty well. It doesn't do anything too wonky. It's all right. The one problem now is that the inside face looks a lot blockier than the outside face. So you end up with this sort of weird roaming rectangle that just sort of rounds on the outside. And that can be really hard to create flaps on your final piece or just to get rid of and make clean. So instead, one of the best ways to fix that is to sort of do these in parallel. Now, I know that when you create these sort of binding boxes, if you will, it'll try to round out that corner. See, if I were to press go now, see, it'll try to round in those edges. But the good news is, because these are parallel, I can just sort of keep going along the edge. And it will try. It'll do its dangdest to keep those lines and that smoothing as parallel as possible Again, honoring the corners that are both on the outer and inner faces there. I know this gets kind of weird and vaguely technical, vast, but please continue to bear with me, because now when I press go, see how it's those nice parallel polygons all the way across? And that's great. We love that. One thing to note about this is that between faces where you're subdividing one edge and not subdividing another, you're going to start to see things like this, where it all sort of bows inward to one point. You can kind of see that right at the corner of this helmet piece right there, the faceplate. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you can see, especially right here, it's not really creating much change in the material. But you can sort of see how, say at the front of this here, it does create sort of a weird bump to the shape right there. And, you know, where we can avoid that, we'd like to. So, the more of it we can sort of smooth together, the better, in my opinion. See, I'm doing the same thing I essentially did on the brim up there to the entirety of the faceplate, because I really like a smooth line around the faceplate. And it's very easy to get one with this tool. Let's go around here, shall we? You can do the same thing you do with the specification of cut line edges that we do for most of our normal unfolds, where you essentially double click this and it'll create a line that sort of runs around. But on lower poly models like this one, that tends to mean it just goes all over the place, and we don't like that. It does not spark joy. Okay, here we go. Nearly got it. Now, here we come to another fun place where we have to make a decision. Because like we said before, we don't want this to round over, and it ends in a point that's just two edges. So, I think, especially because this is also a point that we want to preserve, might as well just run that line across there. Super simple. Up here, I wanted to preserve this rounded edge, this slightly beveled edge right here. So I actually just created a full and complete corner right there. Because otherwise here, I'll do one where it doesn't have that. Because those are sort of uneven in their polygon count. Note how this just dips way inside, and also the overall shape gets really wide, and we don't want that. We actually want to sort of preserve the shape of the visor itself. So we'll just go in here and we hit go. And note this also has the really awesome ability to basically smooth this band in here, because it's also bound by those upper ones. A lot of this stuff sort of starts to bleed together, and that's a really fun feature of this tool. Let's go back just a little bit for a moment. I would like to show how I was able to get this line to become a part of the overall template. Where'd it go? There it is. This line to become part of the overall template. And this was more a modeling feature than a subdivision feature. So let's go to the 3D menu again, hit edit mode, hit edit model. And we'll kind of bounce here between the texture view and the non-textured view so that we have a pretty clear sense of where we're going. Now, I felt like this line really ought to sort of move through here. So if I'm remembering correctly here, bear with me just a little bit, because I am trying to remember something I took like 10 to 12 stabs at. We went ahead and did this a little bit through the subdivision tool. Now, not the subdivision tool, the divide edge tool, forgive me. Now, when you divide an edge, it'll try to split it roughly in the middle and run to two edges. So in this case, there's a triangle on this side and a triangle on this side. And if I divide this, it'll divide it in the middle of the line and run that edge to that edge. Very basically what's happening here. Now, for this bit, what we're going to do is we're actually going to divide this edge, because we want to create a line from here to here. Well, strictly speaking, I want to create a line from here to here. This one will go down to there, and we don't necessarily want that, but it's going to happen. So we go like this, and now we created a line from there to there, and it's sort of following where it is in the texture. And you'll also note that this sort of follows it from there, which means that we can divide here and create another line there. Now, is this perfectly in line with that? Maybe not, but it's darn close. And now I can actually separate my template along that line. And that'll make life a lot easier. Now, this side over here, it's a little bit different because obviously it wants to dip way down there. I actually think that the texture might be a little wonk on this because most of the really high fidelity models I see for this have this ending closer to up here, but not quite. So instead, to sort of create this dip, we can once again divide right here. And I like that. I don't know if it's perfect. Maybe we could get it a little higher. If I divide again, now I've got a division up there, and I sort of like that swoop. But subdividing that will create a bit of a challenge because there's a lot of vertical lines here. We can, in fact, delete some of those by deleting this vertical edge. Watch. Just like this, I go ahead and delete that there, and it's still pretty high up, but now there's only the one in the middle. And I go 3D menu, edit mode, subdivide, bam, 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 just highlighting along the edge I already took. Bam, 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 bam. Just like that. And this is already a preserved edge, so when I go through like this, I go, ta-da, and it sort of smooths it together. Now, I think for this line up here, what we might actually want to do is go to the Subdivision Tool again, and instead sort of bump those numbers up. I'll bump it all the way up to 10 so you can kind of see what happens. It's a much broader smoothing. I think it's still quite good, but it also doesn't do that thing that the really tight smoothing did where it really creates an indent right here. This is a lot more subtle, and that's a solid feature. We like that. We love it. And so this is sort of the way in which I went about doing this, because you can get most of these details back in, especially as you compare it to more detailed models like this. The only thing I really don't like about this model, and bear in mind, this was the model that I used to make this prototype, and I do like it a lot, but the actual visor that it has is a little bit different from the way that I wanted it, so I had to do some freehand there. As well as this one doesn't have the dome sitting over the rest of the helmet. It actually has it sitting under with sort of this detail piece on the brow. And that's not... I don't think it's incorrect for certain versions of the Republic Commando, but I was going for like the OG video game feel, and I really thought that we needed bit. So I like this model for being able to actually give you that feel of it going up and over. But there's ways and to preserve a lot of the features here that are, in other cases, somewhat blockier. Here's a great example of where you need to use both the Subdivision Tool and your modeling features to get a feature really quickly. You can grab all of this, because this is a very smooth, sort of beveled shape right here that we want to preserve. But uh-oh, it dips way down, and that's not where it goes. There's definitely supposed to be a... Whoa, thank God, we're back. We're back. Ah, I'm so sorry. Oh no, right in the middle of this topic. I'm so sorry, everybody. I was just going over how we can add this line in the middle here to put that subdivision where we want it. And see, now it's a much more subtle line, and it goes all the way to the edge. And that's what you need. You need to sort of interpret as you're going along. And that's great. I love the way that this tool allows us to do so many things with the model. One other thing that it's really, really good at that I think gets overlooked a bit, it's actually really good at doing the edges that don't connect to anything. See, we've got all this down here below. And when I go in, and I actually just grab the edges that intersect with nothing, it'll go through and it'll create a very smooth opening for that, which is awesome. But let's say that I want this to be a little more square in the back. Well, I just grab here and here, I create one line each there, and now it's a little more square in the back. It's a very versatile tool. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Now, before we move on from Subdivision, I really want to talk a little bit more about the editing. So we go to 3D menu, edit mode, edit model again. And there's just some parts of this that I didn't like the way this model broke itself down. For instance, I didn't like that it has this sort of sliver right here. you can actually see there's a sliver. It's sort of a quad that's split in the middle. And it does raise this edge just a little bit right there. And I don't think you need that for your foam template. I think the shape is right, but it's not necessarily useful. So if we delete this edge in the middle, see, it just gets rid of that entirely. And now it's one continuous shape. And if I want to, I can add that line into my template, because of course this line does go through there, but I can say raise it with foam rather than having this actual separation. Another thing that we were able to do is add a lot of detail inside of faces. Now, I'm going to try and remember exactly the way I did this, because like I said, I was able to get these rounded edges with the parallel lines in this. This is the same model. It is the same model as the other one, just with some editing, some heavy editing. So let's see what we can do. I did some of this editing before I did any subdivision. So I went to the 3D menu, I hit Edit Model, and then I think I started by swapping these edges here. Nope. That's a mistake. I could have sworn I swapped some edges here. Oh, now I'm faltering. Let's try dividing this edge instead. Divide here. Then let's swap this there. Here we go. It's sort of like a puzzle to be solved. Then we'll divide this edge again now that we've got two symmetrical sides. And of course, it's just doing some funky things down here. I don't care about that though, so I'm going to ignore it. Here we go. Let's see. So now we want to create some lines up here. And to do that, we're going to start swapping around some edges. Well, first we're going to divide them, and then we're going to start swapping some edges around. Let's go in here and say, nope, that's not quite the way I want to do it. I swear I did this, and now I'm just trying to remember the exact way that I did it. This is why I'm creating a tutorial series. Okay, let's see. Divide edge. Let's divide in the middle here instead. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was doing before. So I created these boxes, essentially. Let's see if I can remember exactly how I did this. And then... was that all I did? Hang on, this might actually... I might have actually overdone it. I think this might be all I did. And then I went through and I said, okay, smooth along these new edges I created in the middle, as well as this edge all the way up across the top. Ooh, that dog of mine. And then I also smoothed up along here so that this face along the whole way here would become a lot smoother. And then I think if a miracle happens... yeah, that's basically how I did it, but I think I subdivided it at a much lower angle. Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. And that's very crudely how I achieved that build. Let's see, and if I actually add this in here. Let's even ramp it down just a little bit more. Just like this. And now, there we go. You can see... this actually creates the very round shape. It looks like I created a slightly taller shape on the other one. All you gotta do is do another iteration moving upwards just slightly. But this is the same thing. It's the same basic shapes. And it's worth noting that you can do multiple iterations of this. Say, I could go like this, select go, and then go 3D menu, reset cut line edges. And then when I go back to the subdivision tool, nothing's highlighted, and I can do another round like this. And that's crudely how this tool works. But you can see how versatile it is, how much you can get out of it. Over on our Discord, somebody was looking for a oh gosh, what was it? It was a 3D. They had a 3D file of an ARC Trooper, a Clone Wars ARC Trooper, and it wasn't bad, but it was there were some minor issues with the model, and rather than try to go through and fix those issues, instead what I did is I found a very low poly ARC Trooper, and I'd actually really love to show that off right now, because it's been added to our Trooper templates, because, you know, make some more Troopers. I'm making some Troopers. But if we go, let me see, where did it go? Trooper buckets. There it is. Alrighty. So this guy was extremely low poly, but we were able to get him to a point where this is super serviceable as a model. Is it 100% perfect? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe there's, you know, different shapes and things we could have done to make this even better. But despite a certain lack of texture, we were able to really get the shape right, especially in the actual visor, as well as the overall shape of the bucket. This is actually a version of these templates that I've never done dome templates like this, but I've seen it done a lot to great effect. So I'm really excited to see if anybody winds up making this, especially with, you know, just the fact that ARC Troopers kind of rock, you know, like they do. But this is all thanks to the Subdivision Tool, the cleanliness of these lines, the reshaping in many places of these templates. That's a feature of the Subdivision Tool. So you know, check it out for yourself. Toy around with ways it can improve your models, and let me know what you guys think of this tool. Honestly, talk about it with us over on our Discord, because it's a lot of fun, and it's super interesting to see the ways in which you can modify a model really quickly using Pepakura. Because of course I could go through and remap and revitalize the actual edges and vertices in Blender, and I do that to some degree. But also I can go through in Pepakura as I'm making subtle edits to things and fix it. And that's why I love Pepakura. It really is. Alrighty, now that we've got our talk on Subdivision out of the way, let's undo this. We'll set it over there. Let's talk a little bit about... There it is. This unfold. I know we didn't quite start in this place, but this is where we're going. So this was sent in by user Steinersaurus over on our Discord, and he was really curious what I thought about this, and I felt like if I went through with this on Discord, it might get a little wordy, it might become a lot of block text and not be as clear. So I think this is a great place for us to talk about this. That's good. ICB root beer. That is delicious. So let's take a look. First and foremost, obviously, a lot has been done here to credit the creator of this model, and I really appreciate that. Petmaster, I know, appreciates the hell out of it, so kudos. One thing I will say, it is less useful to put the creator in the actual model as text. It is more useful to put the creator in the name of the file. Because when I go to unfold this, or let's say I didn't love this, and I click undo unfold, if I'm not careful, I can just not save those text objects, and now it's lost forever. I have no idea who made this model, and there's no way to find out. So better to throw it in there, or even better, if you want, you can put it in the author information. That's in the file section. Go to author information, and you can actually write not only the name of the creator of the file, you can also comment things in it like your YouTube, or maybe notes on the file, things to check on there. Instead, let's go here. There we go. Bring it back because I did have it saved. Easy. And let's just say I'm going to move this away for now because not super important to critiquing this unfold. Now, the trade-off here is that you have gone through, this user has gone through and done a lot to simplify this pattern. And I want to applaud them because in a lot of ways there's a lot of amazing things going on here. I'm a big fan of the fact that they were able to get this entire piece as the one piece under the visor there, but they've also separated it along this line so that you can get a smaller piece out of this here. Now that's good for some things, bad for others. Obviously, I'm a big advocate that if you're going to wind up, say, with one contiguous line there and just break it up with, say, a detail line, instead what you can do is you can grab these together, join them together, and then once you once you go through and do your actual building, you just go back in and cut that line in. Easy. But this is also acceptable. Like, this is perfectly acceptable, especially if this makes sense for you how you want to build. One thing I will ding this person on, it is something that I am personally kind of not jazzed about, but I do understand why it happens. They didn't unfold the opposite side. So when I went to join this together, I noticed, hey there, Elmer Gator. How you doing? So when I went through to add this piece on there, and I wanted to add the other side, it wasn't there because he hasn't gone through, or they haven't gone through and, you know, unfold this entire side, and so this is all very messy over there, and I would have to entirely re-unfold it if I just wanted to combine some simple pieces, and that's not great. It's not super bad, especially if you really love this unfold, but it's not great. I like a lot of the way some of these shapes are broken up. Like this rocks. Because one thing that can be really hard when you're doing Pepakura is knowing that a piece should be one continuous shape, but also knowing that it's so bowed, there's no way not to put a seam in. Now, I would say a more straightforward approach may have been to put the break right here instead of where it is right here. Here, I'll kind of zoom in on both of those. Right here instead of where it is right here. But the trade-off is that because you're joining at a much wider band, that's going to be a stronger glue join. It just is. It's going to be a smoother, stronger join if you can sand it down and hide it. These are the breaks. Like, if you put it here, you could hide it in a corner. But putting it here might mean that it's stronger and more accessible for sanding and sealing and, you know, hiding. These are just differences in opinion in terms of actually building this. I do like some of what's happening here, breaking down some of the smaller shapes, especially the shapes in the back here. I like that they're grouped together in a way that seems to make sense. Actually, a lot of this is grouped together in a way that makes a lot of sense. This is something I sometimes get dinged on for my builds. I'm a big believer that the Pepakura window, the 3D window, should guide your pieces, and it should be able to show you where stuff needs to go. But also, it's nice to go, this piece and this piece seem to go together, for they are sitting right next to each other, which is great. We love it. One thing that I think this may suffer from, I think there is some over parting, if you will. There's a lot of division of the parts that I think is unnecessary. For instance, this and this really could have been one part. I know there's a bit of a roundness to this, and obviously there's lines here that I'm not seeing. If I were to ramp this up, okay, 145. If I were to ramp this up, you would suddenly see a lot of these lines reappear. And that's, you can see where this sort of would be divided, and I could pretty easily put this together and even make this one very easy cut with, say, an undercut, and then I wouldn't have a seam there. I wouldn't need to go through and glue that there. That's not super necessary. In fact, I'll sort of demonstrate this. This has already been adjoined, so this is going to look a little wonky, but the concept is still there. So now when I go like this, you can see it does overlap slightly, but if I go through and adjoin those edges again, it's like there's nothing missing there. And if I hide this back down, you can still see that line where you need to make that break. And that's kind of the important thing. Let's undo here, move it back to where it was. I do want to point out that this person has not gone through and hidden lines. Instead, what they've done is hide edges that are nearly flat, which means that they're not erased so much as they are just sort of kind of hidden. And it's an option. I don't like it because if somebody gets into there and like me, somebody gets in there and tries to meddle like I do, they're going to quickly realize that there's a lot more detail to be had, but also it's kind of in weird places. So, take that as you will. I would say that my biggest critique of this model is that some of these parts are really, really tiny and would be very hard to put together. For instance, especially in the back here, I can already see this is what's happening. So we've got this part here, which is super clear. This is probably kind of round, but I would maybe put an edge in there. Whatever. But this starts to get very wheedly very fast. Now, this piece I don't even think I would make physically out of foam, because that's probably just how thick the foam is. So there's no reason to have that part. I would just get rid of it. This feature is probably pretty well built, but I would have added this part to it, because now this is also in that weird territory of it's just kind of the thickness of this piece. So, excuse me, this piece, or / this piece, which I would not have separated. I would have instead added this part to this piece, and it can either be a flap for that other piece, the top part here, to lay on top of, or you can make it an undercut and glue it edge to edge. But as of right now, there's actually nothing for this part and this part to glue to. This part and this part don't actually touch except for the very edge. In fact, here, let me grab... Here's a great example of this. I've got a white piece of foam and a black piece of foam that'll really help illustrate this. So if I take just the edges and try to glue just the edges together, they can slip one way or another, and it's really easy to do that. And that's also not a really strong bond, because it'll want to like flex really hard at that, or maybe it just breaks. Whereas instead, if I were to layer this on top of that, that's a really strong and concrete bond. And it's very clear where that needs to go, and that's easy to do. It's easy to glue this on top of that, rather than trying to get this weird edge-to-edge thing where there's nothing actually touching except the very thinnest edge. And that's not great. You end up having to go through and do a lot of manual work that could otherwise just be a part of the template. And I'm also noticing something else about this part in particular. This person appears to have gotten rid of just this one triangle on well, really both sides. And I don't know why, because now this part doesn't actually reach the end of this part. See that? It's just missing that there. And of course I can add that back in, but I had to add that back in. And that's not something we strive for. I would say that this also is a weird thing that's happening right here. So we've got this part right here, where there's definitely an angle that's meant to happen right there. We can do that as an undercut or sand it in, right? Whatever. But this part, we have for some reason separated out, so now this and this are separate pieces. But they have to meet a piece that's the same angle that is joined together. And I would have made a different choice. I think that realistically, I probably would have just made this part a part of this part and just added it all the way around, basically. Just like that. And then I can do the angles and just heat form it into that curve. And that's a super easy change to make. And it also reduces your part count. You know, you don't have to go through and do quite as many pieces to cut out. And that's me. That's me. I do like some of what's happening here with this part where it sort of slots into there, and you've added this part all the way around that has that edge. However, you didn't really include the lines for that edge. You know, a lot of them are hidden, so you can't see where that line is supposed to be. It's kind of lost. Overall, this is a really solid attempt. I like a lot of things that are happening. I really like the choice to try and make this visor all one part. Although I will say, just adjoining the edges as harshly as possible, but not getting them, will create these weird edges where they sort of creep up into here. but they don't end in a point and it's not clear how to cut them, that's not great either. It's just not great. It's interesting. You can just sort of ignore it. You know, that's an option. But I will say that I think you probably could have done something a little easier somewhere along the way. Or if you're really dead set on doing it that way, there's a way to cheat it so you can get rid of those. You can actually change the scale. So let's say right now it says 3.94 inches. Obviously this is not the final scale. But let's say I wanted to just go through and join these adjacent edges one more time and just get rid of those. Like, just get rid of that. In fact, I was able to go through and get rid of a lot of wonky edges on this. Like, you see that there? Now I'd probably join this along here. There's a lot of extra cutting in these templates that I don't think you need. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything about it. I think that there's just ways to make this even easier on yourself. And that's a good thing. We should always be striving for easier ways to achieve the same level of detail. Overall, if I were to give this grade, I would give this it's like a C+. I mean, this is really good. There's a lot of really good application of great ideas. You know, obviously there's definitely a lot of simplification. I can see the bigger shapes appearing, and you made really good use of the cranial ridges, but there's room to improve, and there's room to perhaps be even more creative about your use of these parts, you know? Like, for instance, you went through and you did the added edge on this part all the way around here. Why not do it here? Why make this its own separate piece when you could instead add it together right there? See, simple. Super cool. And, you know, we achieve a lot more with fewer cuts, and that's kind of the goal. One other thing that I think can really help something like this is recognizing that maybe there's a little more detail in this model that's kind of bound up in the texture than you'd like. I know I released a Halo Infinite template some time ago, and this is not a super textured model. I would say if I actually go to the texture settings, yeah, it's actually just got separate textures for separate portions of the UV, which is great. I like that a lot. But it also means that I'm not worried that there's going to be lines or something missing in here that I just don't see. To that end, you can see I was able to get this visor as one entire piece. Similarly, I was also able to get this as one piece. Well, there we go. This is one piece. And you can see I did similar things where I've got that inner bit right here that you had right there as one piece, but then I went through and I started actually putting a lot of this together. Now I did separate along this edge here, but you can see I was able to combine this all the way across the top there. I was actually even able to combine the entirety of this piece like that, with the idea that you could just layer pieces together using those flaps and those edges. And that's kind of the things. We're just sort of finding ways to make it even simpler on ourselves. Now, for this model, I was actually able to do something very nice right here, which was rather than doing a break or doing a weird inner corner, I was actually able to create a layered effect right here, and I would just layer this part right here onto this flap. Sort of evens things out. And this is a feature of this particular model, which is, of course, a little bit different, but still based off the same source material. It just makes a much nicer foam template, I think. But what do I know? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you yourself are getting into unfolding and you want to learn more, you want to hear more and get some feedback on your unfolds and, you know, how you might be building, let me know. I want to hear more and, you know, maybe do some more of this. This has been really fun because it's always great to see where people are getting with their final pieces. This is a lot of fun. But with that, I think we are going to probably just bounce to the last thing that I thought we could sort of finish up on tonight, which is I just released Full Republic Commando Armor. That is going to be down below in the description after the stream is done. Because I've had a lot of fun with this, and I might be end up making this armor soon because I'm just feeling really pumped about this game. But I did not finish a DC-17, which is the rifle that they use in the game. And I found a really fun model for it that actually has some attachments I'm thinking about doing. But I was able to go through and do some edge definition on this. And now I thought we could just start with the unfolding process and talk a bit about it. I'm not going to make it 53 inches tall, well, 54 inches tall. I think that's dumb. So instead, let's make it, I don't know, what is that, 8? It's about 8 inches. There we go. That 8 inches. We're not going to place parts avoiding page borders. Let's just see how good of a job we did with this. We don't need to show flaps. We don't need this texture on there. I'd say this is not bad. Replica prop weapons especially tend to get really complicated in Pepakura. I've actually been toying around with a technique that another gentleman was able to show me at one point, where you essentially just create one plane or face and draw the outline of it, and you can throw that into Pepakura, and that'll help you scale essentially a 2D model with 3D space. But of course, then you could just use a PDF. This instead creates sort of a folding scenario where I'm actually talking about folding together the outside faces of this, which is not bad. It's just a very specific way of going about doing this. You can see that all the work I did in the 3D menu, though, really does go a long way to simplify cleaning up a lot of this 2D stuff. This is already kind of where it needs to be. Actually, to that end, I was even able to go through on like some of the numbers here and join them. They're basically just joined together. Oh, there's actually an edge there. That's not great. It's not actually connected right there. That's all right. We'll just move this down there and say it's a 9. 999. All right. Let's start somewhere else here. Let's go to the grip. Firm grip. There we go. This is actually cleaned up pretty nicely. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go in a little closer and kind of see what I'm working with. Yeah, I'm trying to get the profile really nice because I would probably not include all of the edge facing on this. I would probably just use this as a template from the side where you can see it sort of slots into the trigger guard, as well as where this all just rests together up here. Creates a very round shape. Let's see, there we go. Add that in there. Great. And we'll round this over as well. I think in the interest of making this usable as a profile piece, I will probably end this right there instead. I'll do the same thing on this side. And I know that's not exactly where the lines line up, but it does create a better two-dimensional template. And to some degree, some of what we're doing is about accuracy as it pertains to the 3D model. But some of this is also just about usability as foam templates. So when I go through and I just join these edges together like that, now I've got a single grip piece that also shows where it breaks in the middle there. That is easily scalable and easy to understand. It's easy to understand where this all goes. To that end, I can actually grab the next part of the sort of grip trigger area, which appears to just be this trigger right here. So I'm going to go like this, bip-a-da-bap, bop-a-da-boop. That's basically it. The trigger. And that would join together right there-ish. Fantastic. Gosh, I could almost be convinced to do it like that, too. See what I mean about just eliminating onesie-twosie faces in the name of trying to make this as clean and clear as possible. There we go. Let's grab that. And this side piece. And the piece from the side. Okay, let's grab that here. And that can be added right there. Done and done. And you see, just like that, I'm able to pop out sort of the grip and the trigger from this somewhat complicated model. I was able to decimate a lot of it away, but there's still, you know, quite a bit of complexity to that. Here's a fun thing where I would probably not do this piece from, say, the side. I would actually probably just do this from the back, since it gets added to the back anyways. And that's where all the vent sort of details are. So now, when I go through and grab this, make sure this is actually joined up. Great. And now I just add this to our finished parts. We'll grab this, we'll sort of move it down. And just like that, we're already well on our way to this gun. Now, here's another fun way I might do this. If I can get this to lay flat, I might actually just do this as sort of a vertical template, because that way I could add it to the bottom of the gun as one piece that also guides where the trigger, the handle, and the trigger guard go. So if I were to actually just, join this together like that, I recognize that there's definitely a little bit of loss of clarity going on here. Give me one moment. There we go. Let's add that together here. There we go. This is actually extremely close, so I'm just going to leave that as is. And now, when I go through on this, there's a lot of edges on this piece, but really this lays almost perfectly flat, which is great because it'll mean that I don't really need any of these lines. I can hide them all when I'm done with this, basically. But even more than that, I can go like this. If I so chose, go to the Set Edge Color tool, which is, I think, also in the 2D menu. But then you can hide these edges just like that and say, hey, that's basically flat. It's one piece, and it's sort of the sideways piece that goes above these. You can actually see where it lines up with all those parts, which I think is hilarious. And that's, you know, this is just kind of the way you make it through a model like this. This is not ideal, by the way. Like, this is a way to sort of hack it if you're not really finding a template for this. I would say this is maybe not the easiest or best way to do this. I could probably draft this, but instead I'm doing it this way because, you know, I've had a lot of people request that I do more weapons. And this is just sort of a great example of why this isn't necessarily the best tool for this particular application. There we go, let's grab that. There we go, that part goes up here. Ta-doo! Go grab all of this. All of that. This actually folds up all the way around it. Because this is a very complex 3D shape, it's not very flat actually, so we actually want this all to go together, as it were. And fold it up and around. Again, super simple. Looks complicated because it has a lot of lines on it, but again, if we pop down to like there, suddenly it doesn't really look like it has many lines at all, does it? Oh my goodness. We are rounding down near the end of our time, which is as it does. I'm going to be in the shop a bit tomorrow doing some stuff, but I'll also be out and about, so I might not be as available on the Discord, but please feel free to hit me up over there. It's a lot of fun. Or, if you like, I am over on Patreon, patreon.com/foamarmory. Feel free to donate if you like. We have a lot of extra builds and things that wind up over there. A lot of extra template. There's a full Havoc Trooper, and these Republic Commando templates have been up there for days. So, if you like what I do, if you like these builds, please subscribe. Check us out over there, and consider supporting the channel that way. All right. Let's see here. Grab this. Oh, weird. I appear to have missed a spot here. It has really bound itself together. That's weird. Okay. Let's see this right there. We want to get rid of that. We want to separate this from that. This is sort of this piece that runs all the way up and over that. It goes here-ish. There-ish. And there's this part right here. There we go. What is this? Where does that go? I think that might be on the inside of this right here. Yeah, it totally is. It's totally on the inside of that. That's okay. And then this part doesn't actually split cleanly in the middle. So we might just force it to split like that. Ta-da! And now this sort of goes like here. Just like that. Just like that. We're already making lots of progress. Tons of progress. Grab this piece. That's probably the only part of that I would keep. You know, the rest of this can kind of go down here. These are the finished parts. We're already making great progress. Remember, when you're making prop weapons, always leave features in there to show that they're props. You know, as much as I love accuracy and making things that look cool, I would probably take the end of this and spray paint it bright orange. Big glossy orange. Make everybody fully aware we've got a toy, we've got a prop. It's not for anything but those purposes. And that's safety 101, kids. Especially when we're talking about gun props. Okay, let's see. Got part of the magazine, which is basically just a big rectangle. That's great, right? This is what you all came for. The rectangles. There we go. Nothing really to smooth here, by the way. This, I could maybe go through on all those 9s and smooth this over, but this is already a fairly detailed model. There's detail where we need it to be, and that's the important part, I think. Let's make sure that we're smoothing over these rounded corners, just like that. That's great. Yeah, no, this tool is, the tools in Pepakura that we've worked on tonight are really the kind of thing that they're just really fun to play around with. They aren't necessarily super concrete tools, but they're definitely things to toy with. And there are ways to get just that little bit more out of this fairly powerful program. So I encourage you all to continue to check it out and try out messing with it. What am I grabbing? I'm on the wrong side. I thought I was on this side. Well, wait, no. I was on the right side. What's going on here? Yeah, because this... Well, there we go. That was weird. This is fun because this actually has a window on one side and not on the other. So we're going to do a little bit of wooge to get that to sit right. Just like that. Go. Yep, just like that. And of course, just like this. Yeah, actually, I might do it that way. There we go. Man, just chugging along. But regrettably, it is time to finish. We even started a little early today. So it's been a real good one. I hope you all got something informative from this. We will definitely be putting some more free templates down below. And I'm not 100% sure on a live stream this Thursday. If I do, it'll be brief. It'll probably be on some commission stuff, but that's what it is. Just dealing with some stuff in the background. Nothing to worry about right now. Just trying to get things taken care of. For now, I have been Jaden. I want to thank you all so much for coming. This has been an absolute delight. Please, take care.